Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to chat about our sleep journey with our baby girl. Her name is Nalia. If you guys are new to my channel, she is almost 10 months old. Looking back on the last 10 months and even just preparing for this video, going through my notes, we've been through a lot. And as a first-time mom, all of this has been so new to me and a lot of things have been so surprising. I've learned so many things. Yeah, we are at a pretty good place right now, so I thought I would sit down and talk about what our journey has been like, some things I've learned along the way that may be helpful to any other parents out there. Of course, this is our experience. I want to share what we have been through. Keep in mind that all babies are different, all parents are different. What works for one family may not work for another. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it or the only way to do it, but this is just what our experience has been. And I know lots of you are also moms or expecting moms, and lots of you have asked for me to share a video like this. I'm also going to touch a little bit on sleep training. I did the Taking Care of Babies course. I learned so many incredible things from that course. We didn't actually end up doing the sleep training, but just doing the course by itself was so helpful to me, so I want to talk about that. I'm going to share a little bit about our routine as well from when she was very young, like a newborn, up until now. She has been sleeping 11 to 12 hours since she was about 7 months, like 6 to 7 months. She started sleeping through the night and like a full night. So I'm gonna talk a bit about that too. Co-sleeping, independent sleep. Okay, starting off when she was a newborn. So obviously in the first few days and the first few weeks, there was not much of a routine really. It's very much like they wake up, they want to eat, you try to keep them awake and entertained for a little bit, and then they sleep again. When we were still at the hospital, at the clinic, she was still okay to take a few of the naps by herself. It might have been because we were so close to each other. Her crib was just next to my bed. The room was really tiny, so I was always like in very, very close proximity, and maybe that's why she felt comfortable. But as soon as we got home, she did not want to take any naps by herself. It was only if she was being held. It's of course such a nice feeling to hold your sleeping baby and to feel them. They're so peaceful and calm with you. It's the best feeling. But also you need to shower and you need to go to the bathroom, and you maybe want to cook and clean up and, you know, do things around the house, and that's not always possible to do when you have a baby sleeping on you. I actually remember having these moments where I would just cry to Mo. I think it was a lot of hormones as well, like balancing out, but I remember feeling like I love that she's only sleeping on me, but it's also really difficult sometimes. And I remember thinking like, it's gonna be like tomorrow that she's not even gonna be living with us anymore, and she's gonna be all grown up, and I'm gonna miss this. So it was like this very difficult like contrast of emotions where I was like, I love it, but it's difficult, but I know I'm gonna miss it. And I was literally like crying about it. Also with our baby in particular, I don't know if you guys have had babies, if it's been like that for you too, but she wanted to be held, but for the most part she also wanted me to be moving. And I don't know if that was because I was pretty active throughout my pregnancy. Like, she just loved that movement. So if she was wrapped up in the carrier, it was great, but I would need to be walking around or bouncing a little bit. I couldn't like hold her and lay down in bed and nap myself. Like, that was not an option. So that made it a little bit challenging too when you are so extremely sleep deprived to have to be moving throughout most of the day, you know? But also what kept me going was that she was a really good nighttime sleeper, in the sense that she would sleep by herself at night. We would co-sleep. So there was a small bed attached to my side of the bed, and she would sleep next to me. And the fact that she did that and I was able to get like a few solid hours of sleep at night, that was what kept me going and being like, it's okay, at least I get that, you know, nighttime sleep to regenerate a little bit. And at the time it was still like so small. I think it was by week 3 that she started having like a 4-hour stretch, then she would eat, and then she would sleep for 3 hours, and then she would eat, and then she would sleep for another 3 hours. So it wasn't too bad, but obviously in the very beginning it's so rough because, you know, you've gone through like this big labor. Maybe it was like that for you, maybe not. Like for me, it took, I want to say, around 18 hours of labor and then deliver her. That by itself is of course really exhausting for your body, and I didn't feel like I could really replenish myself you know, like sleep is so important for our bodies to heal, for us to feel functional and normal. Like that took months. But anyway, one thing that really helped was the Huckleberry app. I've talked about this app before. It's my favorite. I still use it till this day. It's an app where you can log their sleep times and also their feedings, which is the two main things that I use the app for. I could not live without this app. There's so many other things to think about. Like the last thing that I could remember was, you know, when did I put her to sleep? How long has she been sleeping? How much milk did she have at her last feeding? Like when was her last feeding? So what's really great with the app is you can track their wake window. So for how long they've been awake. And following age appropriate wake windows is super important for their sleep and for them to have consistent sleep and enough sleep, because you don't want to try to put your baby to sleep if they haven't been awake for too long and they haven't built up that sleep pressure. But also you don't want to wait too long to put your baby to sleep, because then they will be overtired, they'll have too much cortisol, and it will be really difficult to put them to sleep and have them stay asleep. All of this is available online. Like you can find this out just by typing it into Google. And also a reason why I love the Huckleberry app is that I could track how often I'm feeding her, and that was something that was really helpful as well in helping her have those longer stretches of sleep at night. I made sure that I was feeding her every 2 to 3 hours during the day so that come nighttime she felt satisfied. Of course, she still did have night feeds up until she was about 6 months, but they were very few. And like I said, by week 3 she was sleeping a 4-hour stretch, then had a bottle, then a 3-hour stretch, then another 3-hour stretch. And I think it was by week 5 she was having a 6 to 7 hour stretch of sleep at night, which was golden. Like this is when I started feeling like I could kind of put myself a little bit back together. So really making sure to feed her every 2 to 3 hours so that she would get enough food, enough calories during the day, so that she didn't feel so hungry at night. I think that is like the most important thing when it comes to sleep. We also noticed that on the nights that we gave her a bath, she slept a lot better, a lot deeper and longer. When I noticed that, we started giving her a bath every day, but not very long. We didn't always use soap. Most of the time it was just water, and just kind of lay in there and just feel the water on her body. Also just getting into that good routine, I think that really lined her up to have a good night's sleep. So we started doing that as well at around week 5, and we've actually been giving her a bath nightly up until almost like a month or 2 months ago. Now we do it every other night. Also quickly want to touch on her routine at this time. I don't know if this was the right way to do it, if everyone does it this way, but this is just what worked for us at the time. So her bedtime was around 9:30, 10. She would sleep till around 4 in the morning. Then we would feed her. She would sleep again till about 8 o'clock, and then she would get another feeding, and then she would sleep until about 10. We would take her into her room. So when she would wake up at 8, we would take her into her room. It was still dark in there. Sound machine on, again, very dark in her room. And for her, it would still be her nighttime. And that allowed me to have those 2 to 3 hours to get myself ready for the day, take a shower, do any little work things or meal prep, have breakfast, start cooking dinner, which was something that I was doing even early in the morning. And yeah, just like wake up and feel ready for the day. That was something that I really enjoyed, and that lasted up until around 3 months. So technically it's still kind of like a 12-hour night, but it was shifted. So from about 10 to 10, you can say. But of course, with those 2 feedings in there as well, one at 4 and one at around 8. Also, what that allowed me was that she had one of her naps, like her daytime sleeps, in her crib. When it was light out and she knew that it was daytime, like her daytime, she hardly took any of her naps by herself. Like they were always on me or in the stroller at one point too. It was almost like she knew when mom's awake, she can carry me, like she's there. So yeah, that like first nap or her still nighttime sleep from 8 to 10 was really important for me to just like have a little bit of time to put myself together for the day. I do also want to touch on how I was feeling at that time, like during the newborn stage of, you know, not sleeping, like especially in the early days. I remember when she would fall asleep at night, like I would be going to sleep, but I would also be preparing myself for the night. I would eat before I went to sleep, like after dinner, because I knew that I was going to be up soon. And I was also breastfeeding, I was pumping, also pumping in the middle of the night. So the night was like a full on thing for me. Like it was not like obviously like going to sleep and then like lights out. Like there was activity going on at night, and I needed to mentally prepare myself for that and physically prepare myself for that by like fueling myself. One of you guys actually wrote a comment on one of my videos, and it was something like, when you have a newborn, it's like going out to party, and instead of coming home and sleeping at night because you're like tired and exhausted from the party, the party just keeps going. Like you go to another party basically. And that's kind of what it feels like in the first few weeks of being a new mom or being a new dad. It's like the party never stops. But again, around week 5, she was sleeping 6 to 7 hour stretches at night, which was absolutely incredible. And when that was consistent for a while, I did share all of my specific tips for the newborn stage in a video. I will have that video linked down below if you guys want to check it out if you are also in that newborn stage. Some things that really helped me, like daytime specific things, nighttime specific things. I shared the swaddle that we used at the time as well, and that was another thing. By the way, Swaddling, what an incredible product or thing to use for your baby. So I knew about swaddles before I gave birth. I had bought a few. I actually brought them with me to the hospital, the clinic where I gave birth, and I wanted to use them on our baby, but the nurses there were absolutely like not on board. Like the nurses thought I was like crazy for doing that. They're like, no, but babies love to sleep with their arms up, which is fair, and they do. I don't know, maybe for them like they're more traditional in that way, I don't know, but that pretty much kind of scared me from using swaddles for the first few weeks. But at week 4, I actually have this in my notes, is when I first put the swaddle on her, and she slept so good. It was the Halo swaddle, I believe that's the name, the Velcro one, and we actually had to wake her up from that nap because she was sleeping for so long. She was so comfortable. Yeah, it had taken me literally 4 weeks to do that because I was so afraid and a little bit traumatized actually from being at the hospital and being at the clinic, and then, you know, saying like, no, we don't recommend that you do that. But from week 4, we started using the swaddle, and she was super happy. She slept really, really well. We would swaddle her in the night. Sometimes I could even manage a daytime nap in the swaddle. Usually it was her first nap after her night ended. That was really great too, and definitely with our future kids, I'm gonna make sure that I swaddle earlier on. And one of the big reasons you swaddle is because newborns have this automatic reflex. They just move their arms and their legs. It can shock them out of being in their deep sleep. It can they actually wake themselves up. And also it kind of simulates the feeling of being hugged by you because they're nice and tight and snug. They feel really cozy and secure. So that's another huge benefit of swaddling. And we really liked, again, the Velcro ones because they were super easy to put on and they stayed on. So even if she would like wiggle, she wouldn't wiggle herself out of them. Okay, so that's kind of the newborn phase of our sleep journey. So 0 to 3 months. At 3 months, things completely changed. I actually started feeling a lot better. Like I was starting to feel like things were getting a little bit more manageable. I was more comfortable with motherhood and like feeling more confident in myself as a mom. I definitely had a lot of anxiety about how to do things as a first-time mom. I struggled a lot with feeding. If you guys want to watch my breastfeeding journey video, I will have it linked down below, but that was a huge stress point for me. Of course, sleep was, you know, really difficult, like when you're not sleeping enough, and just learning how to do things as a new mom, like how to dress your baby, what to do with your baby, like wake windows, how to put your baby to sleep, how to make them stay asleep, like all of these things. And by month 3, I was starting to feel like I was kind of getting into a good groove of things. And then I broke my ring finger. I talked a little bit about that also in my videos from that time, but that was really difficult, and that greatly affected her sleep as well because I was no longer able to put pressure on my finger. I had a huge cast on my finger and I couldn't actually lay her down, couldn't even change her diaper. It was really challenging. Also at that time, I don't know if she just figured out like when it was actually morning, but she just did not want to take that first sleep during the morning time, which was normally between like 8 and 10. She just didn't want to take that sleep. So it's almost like she knew that it was morning and she wanted to be like up and awake, and then she would nap later on. So that definitely changed things too. And Mo and I also, just from a personal standpoint, like we really had to figure out like a new routine, because again, I could not lay her down. We also didn't have any help at the time. I think this is also important to mention for the newborn stage. Both of our parents did come to visit, but they don't actually live here. But when the accident happened, Mo and I, we really had to work more together, and he really stepped up. We also did get a part-time babysitter slash nanny at the time who could start helping, because it was really tough. So at that point, even the occasional nap that she would do during the day in her swaddle, that was not happening anymore because I couldn't lay her down. So all of the naps were done in the carrier. And also, as I had mentioned, I would sometimes be able to put her to sleep in the stroller if we would go for a walk, and that was really nice. But when I broke my finger, I could not, again, I couldn't lay her down in the stroller. And also, in case I did need to pick her up, I just didn't feel confident being alone with her outside with this huge cast on my finger, and you know, having to pick her up, like it was just not an option. So all of the daytime naps started being in the carrier. And then when our babysitter at the time was helping, we wanted to keep the routine consistent for Nalia, so we were doing all of her naps in her room with a sound machine on and in darkness. So at that point and at that age, it's really great for them to also have their daytime naps in darkness, so with the blinds shut and with the sound machine on, so that they can have longer sleeps. That is something in the newborn stage that you don't want to do, so that they can differentiate between day and night. But yeah, at that age, they already know the difference. So yeah, we wanted to keep her sleep routine consistent. So whether it was me or it was the babysitter, we would just be in her room. It would be dark, it would have the sound machine on, and it was a lot. I remember the feeling of my feet and my legs in the morning, or if I would get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, like my feet were aching. I had like cramping in my feet and in my legs from doing this like bouncing during the day, holding her in the carrier. Because again, she loves the movement, and if you stop moving and she's not like in a super deep sleep, she will wake up. Okay, so getting to the end of month 3, beginning of month 4, if you guys are new parents or if you've heard about regressions, sleep regressions, whew, the 4-month sleep regression started to creep in, and I just couldn't really believe that it was something that would affect us, because she was sleeping really great at night. Again, she was having those really long stretches, like 7 hours. I was like, sleep regression, what's that? But yeah, at the end of month 3, early month 4, she just started waking up from like every little thing. Small sounds would start waking her up. She would just wake up by herself, because at that age, their brain is actually changing. The way that they sleep changes. So their sleep cycles start to become more like adult sleep cycles. And we actually wake up between sleep cycles, but most of the time we don't even notice, because we just go right back to sleep. Pretty sure it stems from like a survival thing, where we would wake up and just check that our environment is still the same. Are we safe? Is everything cool? Okay, I'm gonna go back to sleep. But for babies, when they're learning how to do this, they wake up and they're literally awake. And for a lot of them, they need to be resettled again to be able to go back to sleep. And that is really challenging for a lot of babies. So that is a super common sleep regression at 3 to 4 months. A lot of parents deal with it. There's so many articles about it, and I remember having to put the pacifier in her mouth, for example, multiple times during the night. Thankfully, she was pretty soothed with the pacifier alone. I don't think we started feeding her too many times more than she was already being fed before, but that's something that I know happens to a lot of parents, is that they start feeding their babies more at night, thinking that's going to help them go back to sleep, but then they're not eating as much during the day, and then everything kind of switches, and this nighttime awakeness just keeps happening more and more and more, and they sleep more during the day than at night. Also, what's pretty difficult with this age, this 3 to 4 month age, is that's when they start coming out of the swaddle. The swaddle is only meant to be used from when they're newborn up until the moments where they can start to roll over, or that they show signs of rolling over, because obviously if they do happen to roll over when they're swaddled, it can cause a suffocation hazard, breathing hazard, and you want to make sure that, you know, they're not obviously laying on their belly like swaddled. And so that was something that was really on my mind at that time too. I was constantly checking if she was, you know, rolling like on her side, or not rolling, but even just like moving. I was super anxious about that. And again, my sleep at that point was really off. I was waking up like probably every 2 hours or so, and then we were having problems with the swaddle. We would somehow break out one arm of the swaddle, even in the Velcro, so we would need to fix that during the night. Actually really funny, because Mo was somehow convinced that she was not able to sleep without the swaddle at night, and I was always telling him, like, you know that she's not going to use the swaddle when she starts to roll over. And he was really adamant with keeping the swaddle on and keeping it going for as long as possible, because she was sleeping so good with it. And then when we had to transition her out of it, along with the sleep regression and her waking up between her sleep cycles, it was just a lot. All right, so month 4 going into month 5, I was doing lots of research and trying to find ways on how we can help this 4-month sleep regression. And I came across the Taking Care of Babies 4-month sleep regression course. It was more like a PDF. Actually, it wasn't a video course, but she did have a lot of tips on how to try to deal with this regression. I felt very intimidated and so far away though from the things that she was recommending, like laying your baby down in the crib drowsy but not asleep. Like, that has never worked. There was no way that she would sleep by herself if she was drowsy but not asleep yet. However, it of course makes a lot of sense, because when they wake up, they need that same thing that brought them to sleep again, so that they can again go back to sleep. Like, that is the whole point. So if they were to fall asleep by themselves, they know the environment, they know the feeling, they feel okay. If they can do it once, they can do it again. So of course that is like a great theory, but in reality for us that did not work. However, when I got that PDF, I saw that she also has a course for 5 to I think 24 months old. It's called the ABCs of Sleep, and that you can start doing at 5 months old. And that is a sleep training method that she talks about in the course. It covered both a nighttime sleep and also daytime sleep. So I did both courses, and I remember being in her room in the dark, like with the sound machine on, watching these courses as I was holding her as she was napping, yeah, like multiple times per day for weeks on weeks on weeks. And I would be taking this course and just preparing myself, like, this is what we're gonna do. It was so difficult. It's fine to do it like, you know, a few days or a few weeks, but if you're doing it for months on end, it does get very challenging, both physically and emotionally as well. So I did the course, I watched all the videos, I took tons of notes, I printed out all the PDFs, and I was just like ready. Like, when she turns 5 months old, we are starting sleep training. At first, when I heard about sleep training, I did feel like it was quite a harsh method. I think that's like almost everyone's feeling, right? Because if you hear your baby crying, like, you know, you want to go and soothe them, but what sleep training does is teach them how to fall asleep by themselves. Like I mentioned in the intro, we didn't actually end up doing the sleep training, and there's so many feelings and sides on sleep training, and if you should do it, if it's healthy, if it's not. But of course, it's such a personal decision to what feels good to you, for your family. There are lots of different methods to try. There's not just one and done. On a scale of how involved you are to how not involved you are, there's a lot of different methods on that line, and you can choose, you know, if you choose to go down that path, like which one is best for you. But she shares a method that is very similar to the Ferber method. Even though we didn't do the sleep training, just the things that she taught me in terms of routines, timings, about the environment of the room, wake windows, feedings, the other things that she spoke about in the course, that was 1000% worth it for me, even if we didn't end up actually doing the main part of the course, which is like kind of crazy to think about, but it was so helpful to me. So yeah, when she turned 5 months old, I was really in a place of feeling desperate, like we really need to change something. She wasn't sleeping well at night, and during the day she would only sleep on me in the dark room. Yeah, it was just starting to get a lot. I was still working at the time. Like, of course I do my YouTube videos here, but we also do Nourish 3, and we were pretty much doing everything by ourselves. We didn't have a lot of help. Like, we had the babysitter who would come for a few hours, but you know, for the rest of the 20 hours it was us. So it was a lot, and I was really desperate. We really needed to change something. Mo was very hesitant about it, but I was telling him, like, this is the only solution. Like, I couldn't think of anything else that we could do. So we were like preparing for that, like just wrapping our heads around like the technique and the method that we were gonna do. And then she started like having these really good nights, like odd nights now and then, where it almost made me, it made me feel hopeful. Like, maybe she's actually gonna get this on her own, where she would have really great sleeps at night. And also something that we did per the Taking Care of Babies course, when she was almost 5 months old, I started putting her to sleep in her room. So in her crib, in her room. That was so scary for me to do, just by the way, for Mo as well, but especially for me, because before she was sleeping next to me like the whole night. But the thing that actually really pushed us to do that is because we both got sick. We were traveling over Christmas time. We went to Barcelona and to Geneva in Switzerland to see my family for Christmas, and Nalia actually unfortunately got sick on the first leg of that trip. We had this really bad residual cough where I would need to cough at night, and Mo too, and at night when we were in bed we would cough, she would wake up, and it was like that really dry cough, loud cough, and it was really hard to manage that and not have her wake up, even to the point where I would hold my coughs in, and my tears, like I would just cry, not like emotionally cry, but just that was like my body's reaction, because I just didn't want to cough and wake her up and have to, you know, do the whole thing of resettling, and which can literally take so long. So I would just hold my cough in, and like I would have tears running down my face, and I thought we just need another way, like we need to find a solution. And also not just that, but I had noticed since the 4-month sleep regression, she was just so sensitive to sounds. When we would turn over, like put the blanket on one side or make any kind of like sounds or noises during the night, she would wake up from them. So the cough was like the last straw of this whole thing. So we did the whole routine exactly like we normally do, but instead of putting her here in the co-sleeping bed, we put her in her crib, in her room, and she slept amazing. She still of course had a couple of wake ups. She was still eating at the time at night, but she didn't have those sounds from me coughing, from Mo moving around. None of that was affecting her anymore in her own sleep space, and she slept so good. The first few weeks of that, I was glued to my monitor, like literally checking the camera every hour, but I was checking it all the time, making sure that she was okay. It just felt like, I don't know, like a piece of me, like a piece of my body was like somewhere else. Like it was very stressful and scary. But I also saw that she was sleeping a lot better, and I knew at some point that I was gonna sleep good too. But anyway, getting back to the sleep training, so she would do these odd, like really great nights where again it gave me like motivation to keep going. And also with the course, it's recommended to have at least 2 weeks at home of steady training, and also if you want to do the naps portion, to have 2 weeks for that, where you're not traveling, you're not doing anything, you are able to commit to having a good solid routine of having their naps in their crib for them to get used to that. And we actually had our Maldives trip that we went on in February coming up pretty soon at that point. And so I thought, okay, like I kind of had this pressure on me, like if we're gonna start it, we have to start it before that trip. But then I also thought, you know, it's like so close to the trip, then things are gonna get messed up. You know, there's a time zone difference, like we're gonna be on a flight, a new environment, new sleeping situation, and all of that. That was like heavily on my mind as well. So what I did was I started to implement everything else that she taught in the course, except for the sleep training part. So I followed her routines in terms of, like she has these schedules for the age appropriate schedules for your baby to follow in terms of sleep time, wake times, feedings, and all of that. And that worked really well for us. So when she she turned 5 months, we dropped to 3 naps. And something that she recommended to wean the night feeding is to do a dream feed at 11 o'clock or between 11 and 12, because that's when they're in their deepest sleep. So we started doing that as well, with hopes that she would drop the 4 a.m. feeding, because also at that age, most babies just biologically, they don't need that overnight feed anymore. So we started doing that as well, and her bedtime also got moved earlier to around 7:30. And yeah, then the craziest thing happened. So we had this super long trip to the Maldives. When we got there, so we had been doing the dream feed at 11, but she would still a lot of the times wake up at around 4 a.m. and want a feeding too. And I was really adamant about trying to limit that and really focusing on feeding her enough during the day so that we could drop that last and final night feeding so that we could get a full night of sleep and rest for everyone, her included. But it was really challenging. So if she would wake up at 4 or 5, I would just do everything I could think of before I would actually give her a bottle, so that she would make up for that during the day, and I would give her plenty of food during the daytime. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't work. So sometimes I would end up feeding her. Sometimes all she needed was some cuddles, maybe a pacifier, just rocking her a little bit, and then she would actually sleep until the morning. So that was like going on and off for about a month. And then we went to the Maldives, and we had a really long flight there. Like the trip was I want to say like 16 hours or so, door to door. And the first night that we got to the Maldives, we unpacked and all of that. We arrived in the evening time. We set up her bed, put her to sleep, and for the first time ever, she slept through the entire night. And we didn't dream feed her. She didn't wake up to want to eat. She just slept the whole night. And I think it was because she was so exhausted, and we were so exhausted too. Like, it was such a long trip to get there. I think out of just sheer tiredness and feeling so exhausted, like, everyone just slept through the night, and it was the most amazing thing. It was the first time that we had all had like a full night's sleep, and this was just before she turned 6 months. And she actually was sleeping through the night that whole trip. So we weren't doing any dream feeds, no feedings at 4 in the morning. And very shocking too, like the first time traveling for such a long distance with your baby, and switching time zones and all of that. We just got really lucky that she was so tired that she just dropped the feedings by herself at night. Then we came home, and adjusting back to the time zone here was a little bit more challenging for her. I do want to do a whole video on my travel tips for babies, and I will include the sleep specific things that we did to adjust her into the correct time zone. We also did just come back from a trip from Miami, and that was a 6-hour time difference. So that was a lot too. But I'll save those tips and that story for the next video that I'm gonna film. I do also want to mention something really important that changed at around the 4 to 5 month mark. So from when she was a few weeks old up until the 4 to 5 month point, we were following that eat, play, sleep cycle, or eat, play, sleep routine, where she will wake up from a nap, she will eat, will play a little bit, and then she'll sleep. And the theory behind that is that they won't rely on the bottle or on the boob to fall asleep. So we were doing that. It was working great. She would just take a pacifier to fall asleep. But then at around that 4 to 5 month mark, I was feeding her once. It was actually at my mom's house when we were there for Christmas. She had had a pretty rough night. It was, again, going through the 4-month sleep regression, waking up tons, like barely sleeping. It was really difficult. So I was giving her her morning bottle from when she had just woken up from her night sleep, and she actually ended up falling asleep at the bottle, and she was in a really deep sleep. And because she had had such a bad night, I just put her to sleep again, and she actually slept really well. I think she slept for over an hour in the crib at my mom's house. That was really great and very new to me. Again, she hadn't really done that since she was like a fresh newborn. And then that kind of changed like the timings of everything. So I was again trying to feed her like every 2 to 3 hours, and then her sleeps just happened to come like right after that 2 to 3 hour point where she would then have a bottle. And then all of a sudden, all of her naps just started happening right before she had a bottle. And at first I was kind of worried about that, because I thought, are we setting ourselves up for a really bad habit here where she will need the bottle every time she wakes up, like in the night. But it actually worked out really well for us, and it's still something that we do till this day, and it all changed just from that one moment. And that's something that actually the course highly suggests against doing. The Taking Care of Babies course really emphasizes on the eat, play, sleep cycle or routine, but I just went with my gut on that one, and it's worked out really well for us. And again, Nalia has been sleeping through the night since she was 6 months old, still with falling to sleep with the bottle. Again, this is just our story, our journey, what has worked for us. Not saying it's the right thing or the only way, but I'm just sharing my experience, and that it is possible to still do that and have a successful night. Also, something I think is important to mention is the reason why the Taking Care of Babies course, and I think a lot of like sleep training courses, recommend waiting till around the 5-month mark. That is actually when they are biologically and developmentally ready to connect those sleep cycles by themselves without needing the assistance from their parents. So of course some babies just are not able to do that until much later. All babies are different. That is the first biological and developmentally appropriate time for them to do that. Before 5 months, it's just absolutely not recommended, or even expect your baby to be able to sleep for a really, really long stretch of time by themselves. So that pretty much brings us up to where we are right now and how she's been sleeping up until this point. So again, she is 9 months old now. She's almost 10 months old in a few days. But yeah, she has been sleeping through the night since about 6.5 months. So the last, 3 months or so. And it's felt absolutely incredible. And the fact that she was able to learn how to do it by herself and just figure it out on her own, for me, feels really amazing. Although I was so ready to do the sleep training. Knock on wood, she's gonna continue sleeping really well. So crazy and like ironic. I've been planning on filming this video. I've made my notes for it. I've been thinking a lot about it. Not last night, but the night before, she actually had the craziest night that she's had in months, like multiple months, where she woke up at 12. Sometimes she needs like a little soothing, like just a pacifier or a little cuddle. If it happens between like 10 and 12 at night. But 2 nights ago, she did that, where we thought she just needed like a little cuddle and a pacifier, but she just was not going to sleep. And then when she finally would fall asleep after lots and lots and lots of soothing and rocking and walking, you would lay her down and she would just start crying. We ended up feeding her. I fed her 2 bottles. Almost 3 hours had passed. Like, this was so crazy. Mo and I were like, we felt like we were back in the newborn stage of like trying to figure things out. It was so crazy. And the only way she would actually fall asleep was by staying like in my arms. So I ended up having her fall asleep, and then I took her into the bed with us and had her sleep with us, and that was the only way that she would sleep. So that was so crazy, so unexpected, and I think it's separation anxiety starting to really get strong, but it's not consistent. Like last night she didn't do that. I don't know how it's gonna go for the next few nights. Maybe there will be a part 2 to this. Yeah, they keep you on your toes, that's for sure. I actually don't mind if she would sleep in our bed, especially when she's older. That's something that I actually remember very clearly doing with my parents, and that was like just the most comforting and special and cozy thing for me in the world, was to like creep up into my parents' bed at night sleeping. So I'm definitely not against that or anything. Whatever makes her sleep the best. I just know when we moved her into her own room when she was 5 months, her sleep was just so much better and deeper, and that's all that I care about. If she would sleep deeper and better with me, I'll have her with me every single night, as long as of course I can also sleep, like I can be comfortable. But yeah, that was such a crazy and odd and I don't know, super crazy thing that happened, also just in preparation for this video. So I thought I would mention that as well. Hello from the future me. I was sitting down to edit this video and I realized I completely forgot to update you guys on what happened once my finger healed and I was able to lay her down again and put pressure again on this hand, which I hadn't been able to do for about 2 months, which is why I had to have her in the carrier for all of her naps, and Mo was putting her to sleep at night so he could lay her down in the co-sleeper. And a lot actually changed once I had my finger back, my hand back, which just felt absolutely amazing. So at around the 4 to 5 month mark, when we started laying her down in the crib in her room, I also started laying her down there for her naps during the day. And in the beginning, she would fall asleep on me, and instead of continuing to carry her, I laid her down, which felt so scary in the beginning because it brought me back to those newborn days when she would be fully asleep. You would lay her down and she would just wake up. But at this point, I think because she was a little bit older, her sleep did start to get a little deeper and she felt okay being put down. So she would stay asleep as I laid her down, and she would pretty much just sleep for one sleep cycle, so for around 30 to 40 minutes, and then she would wake up. I would see her on the monitor, I would go in her room, and I would resettle her. So either I would just give her the pacifier, sometimes that worked by itself, but most of the time I would pick her up, I would rock her again, and then either I could lay her down sometimes, but for most of the time she just wanted to be held. But still, just having that 30 minutes was so huge and was such an improvement. And then over time, I worked on having her more and more awake as I laid her down. So she would feel that drowsiness, be really tired, and hopefully know that she's in her crib, that she can close her eyes and fall asleep. And then when she wakes up, she's gonna be in the same place and not in my arms and be freaked out like, where am I? So what I would do is I would give her the bottle, and then I would wait to actually put her sleeping bag, like her sleep suit or sack, on just before I would lay her down, or before it would be like her nap time. So I would give her the bottle, I would keep her upright for a little bit, let the milk go down. After a few minutes, I would lay her down in the crib, and then I would put on the sleeping bag, and that would just wake her up just enough for her to just kind of rouse a little bit and see where she was, and then she would go back to sleep. There was a balance though, because sometimes it would wake her up too much and then she would get really upset, and then I would have to pick her up. But just that balance of being like super tired but still knowing where she was, that she was in her crib, and then falling asleep, we worked on that for weeks. I did notice though that it didn't really matter when it came to her being able to connect the sleep cycles by herself, whether she was fully asleep or whether she was falling asleep by herself, like doing the last 5% by herself. It didn't always make a difference on how long that nap was, but in the long run, I still feel like it helped because it made her feel, I think, more comfortable and confident in being there by herself. Also, because I took the Taking Care of Babies course, I knew approximately how long her naps were supposed to be for the age that she was at the time. And then the course also teaches you like the older ages, gives you age appropriate routines and kind of like schedules. They're not really like schedules, but it's just more like guidelines. So if she had only been napping for one sleep cycle for 30 to 40 minutes, and I knew that the nap should be a little bit longer, I would then go in and resettle her. So to make sure that she got that good amount of sleep, so that when she wakes up, she feels good, she's happy and well rested. And it's so important for their growth and for their development too, to be able to get enough sleep. But yeah, fast forward a little bit, she has now been going down pretty much fully asleep in her crib. I actually put the sleeping bag on before I give her the bottle just because it's easier, and like I mentioned, I didn't really notice a huge difference. It just went a little bit smoother that way, and she did have some really good long deep naps by herself like that. And also, I think it's important to mention that she doesn't fall asleep every single time on the bottle. Most of the time, like 95% of the time, I give her the milk. When she's full, she often takes a pacifier, sometimes not, just depends. And then I will get up and I will rock her and like swing her, hold her, cuddle her for anywhere from like 10 minutes to sometimes 20 or 30 minutes even. Like it just depends on the day and on the nap. Sometimes she is asleep and I think that she's going to be fine when I lay her down, but then she ends up waking up and then I have to pick her up again. And also currently she is not drinking 2 to 3 hours anymore because she is eating solids. I feel like she's eating quite a bit of food that is kind of like compensating for the milk, so she's actually drinking less milk now. But again, her night sleeps are, for the majority, are really good. I think when she does have those wake ups, it's not really because of the milk. I do offer her milk when she's had those nights recently, but she doesn't even want it, so it's more like that she just wants me. So now she is having 4 bottles. I thought I would mention that in case you guys have a baby that is a similar age and you're curious. She has a bottle when she wakes up, and then a bottle before her first nap, a bottle before her second nap, and then a bottle before bed, and she eats breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay, that's like a little recap that I forgot, so now let's get back to the video. So yeah, that is where we are at today. I'm feeling really good. Of course, we had that little night the other night, but other than that, like, we've been sleeping really well. I feel a lot better. I just feel like I'm slowly starting to put myself back together. Those first few months were really challenging. But of course, on the other hand, you're so in love with your baby too, and you would do everything and anything for your baby. Through sharing that journey, I feel like I already mentioned a few of our tips, but I just want to go over some of them just to kind of recap this video. So first thing, just making sure that your baby is getting enough food, enough milk, that they feel full and satisfied at night and are able to go for those longer stretches. Having a good routine, this is so important. Babies thrive on consistency and routine, knowing what's going to come next. For us, we're not really at that stage. I don't know if we'll ever be at the stage where she will follow certain times, like because it's now 11 o'clock, she needs to nap. It's more about watching her wake windows and following her cues, her sleepy cues, having age appropriate wake windows between her naps. Again, using the Huckleberry app is so helpful for me. It tracks everything. You don't have to think about it. Having a good sleep environment for your baby, so making sure the room is dark, that there are no like annoying lights flickering or anything. Having a sound machine on with some white noise so that it can drown out and kind of soften the other sounds that are going on in the home or outside on the street. And just having a safe and cozy sleep environment for your child, and having a monitor there so you can check on them, especially having the room be dark and not stimulating, so not having anything over their head like the mobiles and things like that, because when they do rise and come up to the top of their sleep cycle and they slightly wake up, they're going to look around. I see her doing it in the monitor. She will look around and then she'll go back to sleep. And of course, if there are lights on or there's, you know, some fun like toy there for her to look at or something going on, like, she will be less likely to put herself back to sleep between those cycles. Also, for when she was younger, we were doing the nighttime feeds. I made sure to keep them really soothing and very much just to the point of feeding her, so I wouldn't turn a lot of lights on. We didn't like have playtime or anything like that. It was just waking up, feeding, and then going back to sleep. Again, I did make a whole video during that newborn stage of all of the specific things that really helped me when she was at that age with her sleep. I'll have that video linked down below. You guys can check it out if you're also in that phase with your baby. And yeah, I do also plan on sharing a baby travel tips video, sharing our experience with the flights and the trips that we've done so far. She's already been on 4 trips: Barcelona, Geneva, Maldives, and Miami. So quite a lot of trips already under her belt. We've already had a lot of good experience with that. So stay tuned for that, and I will also cover some sleep related things specifically related to travel within that video. I'll also leave some helpful resources down below, the links to the course, also the swaddle that we use, our sound machine monitor. I did also do a nursery tour where you can see our crib and our sleep space. I will also have that link down below. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video and found some helpful tips, some good takeaways. I would love to hear about your experience. If you're also a mama or a parent, do let me know how your experience has been with your baby. Do you have any similarities with your journey? Yeah, I'm really curious to know how it's going for you guys. So let me know down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you're having a beautiful day, and I will see you in my next